Hi, I'm Rainbow Sparkle and I'm reading The Enchanted Wood by Enid Blyton, and this is chapter 3, Up the Faraway Tree. The children did not tell their father and mother about the happenings in the Enchanted Wood, for they were so afraid that they might be forbidden to go there. But when they were alone, they talked about nothing else. When do you suppose we could go up the faraway tree? Fanny kept asking. Oh, do let's go, Joe. Joe wanted to go so badly, but he was a little afraid of what might happen. He knew that they ought to look after his two sisters and see that no harm came to them. Just suppose they went up the faraway tree and never came back. Then he had an idea. Listen, he said. I know what we'll do. We'll climb up the tree and see what's at the top. We don't need to actually go there. We can just look. We'll wait till we have a whole day to ourselves and then we'll go. The girls were so excited. They worked hard in the house, hoping that their mother would say that they could have the whole day off to themselves. Joe worked hard in the garden too, clearing away all the weeds. Their parents were very, very pleased. Would you like to go to the nearest town and have a day there? Said their mother at last. No, thank you, said Joe. We've had enough of towns, Mother. What we'd really like to do is have a whole day of a picnic in the wood. Oh, very well, said Mother. You could go tomorrow. Father and I are going to go out for the day and buy some things that we need. You can take your dinner and tea and go off by yourselves, if it's fine and sunny. How the children hoped that it would be fine and sunny. They woke early and jumped out of bed. They pulled their curtains and looked out. The sky was as blue as cornflowers. The sun shone between the trees and the shadows lay down on the dewy grass. The enchanted wood stood dark and mysterious behind their garden. Oh, how lovely, lovely, said Bessie and Fanny as they flew on their clothes. Are you ready, Joe? They all had breakfast. Then Mother cut sandwiches and put cakes into a bag and 3 biscuits each. She sent Joe to pick some plums from the garden and told Bessie to take 2 bottles of lemonade. The children were most excited. Mother and Father set off to town. The children waved goodbye from the gate. Then they tore indoors to get their hats and a bag in which they could put their food into. They slammed the cottage door. Adventures were in the air that morning. Up the faraway tree, Joe, Bessie and me, sang Fanny loudly. Hush, said Joe. We're not far from the Enchanted Wood. We don't want anyone to know what we're going to do. They ran back down the back garden and out of the little gate at the end. They stood still in the overgrown narrow lane and looked at one another. It was the first big adventure of their lives. What were they going to see? And what were they going to do? They jumped over the ditch into the woods. At once they felt different. They felt that magic was all around them. The birds' song sounded different. The trees once again were whispering in secret to each other. Wisha, 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 wisha. Oh, said Fanny, shivering with delight. It feels lovely. Come on, said Joe, going down the green path. Let's find the faraway tree. And they followed him. He went on until he came to the oak tree under which they had sat before. There were 6 toadstools too, which the brownies had held their meeting on, though the toadstools looked rather brown and old now. Which is the way now? Said Bessie, stopping. None of them knew. They set off down the little path, but they soon stopped, for they came to a strange place where the trees stood so close to each other that they couldn't go any further. They went back to the oak tree. "Let's go this way," said Bessie. So they all set off in a different direction. But this time they came to a curious pond, whose waters were pale and yellow and shone like butter. Bessie didn't like the look of that pond at all, and all three of them went back once more to the oak tree. "This is too bad," said Fanny, almost crying. "Just when we've got the whole day to ourselves, we can't even find the tree." "I'll tell you what we'll do," said Joe suddenly. "We'll call for the brownies. Don't you remember how they said they would help us if we wanted them?" "Of course," said Fanny. "We had to stand under the oak tree and whistle 7 times. "Go on," Joe whistled, said Bessie. So Joe stood beneath the thick green leaves of the oak tree and whistled loudly 7 times. The children waited. In about half a minute, a rabbit popped its head out a nearby rabbit hole and stared at them. "Who do you want?" said the rabbit, in a sort of funny voice. The children stared in surprise. They'd never heard an animal speak before. The rabbit put his ears down and spoke again rather crossly. "Are you deaf? Who do you want?" I said. We want one of the brownies," said Joe, finding his tongue at last. The rabbit turned and called down the hole, "Mr. Whiskers, Mr. Whiskers, there's someone wants you." There came a voice shouting something in answer, and then one of the 6 brownies squeezed out the rabbit hole and stared at the children. "Sorry to be long," he said. "One of the rabbit's children has measles, and I was down seeing to it." "I didn't think rabbits got measles," said Bessie, astonished. They more often get the weasels," said Mr. Whiskers. "Weasels are even more catching than measles as far as rabbits are concerned." He grinned as if he'd made a huge joke, but then the children had no idea what weasels were, on little animals, and even rabbits, so they didn't laugh. "Oh, we wanted to ask you which way it was to the faraway tree," said Bessie. "We've forgotten it." "I'll take you," said Mr. Whiskers, whose name was really a very good one, for his beard reached right down to his toes. Sometimes he even trod on it, and this jerked his head downwards suddenly. Bessie kept wanting to laugh, but she thought she better not. She wondered why he didn't tie it around his wrist or something like that, away from his feet. Mr. Whiskers led the way between the dark trees. At last he reached the trunk of the enormous faraway tree. "Here you are," he said. "Are you expecting someone to come down it today?" Well, no," said Joe. "We rather wanted to go up ourselves." "Go up it yourselves?" said Mr. Whiskers. "Don't be silly. It's dangerous. You don't know what might be up there at the top. There's a different place almost every day." "Well, we're going," said Joe firmly, and he set his foot against the trunk of the tremendous tree and took hold of the branch above his head. "Come on, girls." "I shall go and fetch my brothers and get you down," said Mr. Whiskers in a fright, and he scuttled off. "It's so dangerous, it's so dangerous." "Do you suppose it's all right to go?" said Bessie, who was usually the sensible one. "Come on, Bessie," said Joe impatiently. "We're going to see what's at the top. Don't be a baby." "I'm not," said Bessie, and she and Fanny hauled themselves up beside Joe. "It doesn't look very difficult to climb, and soon we'll be at the top." But it wasn't as easy as they thought. as you will see.